What happens if you snitch on someone in prison? Picture this. A man walks into the prison yard for the first time after being labeled a snitch. Within minutes, he's surrounded by inmates who somehow already know exactly what he did on the outside. No phones, no internet, no newspapers. Yet the information traveled faster than wildfire through a communication network so sophisticated it would make intelligence agencies jealous. Here's what most people don't understand about snitching in prison. It's not just about one person breaking a code. It's about a complete social ecosystem that's been perfected over decades, with its own justice system, information networks, and survival mechanisms that operate entirely outside official prison rules. And the ingenuity behind how this all works, it's absolutely mind-blowing. When we talk about prison, most people imagine concrete walls and steel bars. But what they don't see is the invisible infrastructure. A complex social network that's more organized than most corporations, more efficient than government agencies, and more innovative than Silicon Valley startups. This system has one primary function: maintaining order through information. The no snitching code isn't just a rule. It's the foundation of an entire civilization that exists within our prison system. And when someone violates that code, they're not just breaking a promise. They're threatening the very structure that keeps thousands of people alive and functioning in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. Today, we're going inside this hidden world to understand exactly what happens when someone snitches, how the prison community responds, and the incredible resourcefulness that emerges when people create their own justice system from absolutely nothing. Here's where it gets incredible. Prisons have developed the most sophisticated information network you've never heard of. When someone gets arrested and charged, word spreads through the system before they even arrive at their facility. It starts on the outside. Family members, friends, people in the community, they all talk. But here's the genius part. Inmates have created a communication system that spans multiple facilities, cities, even states. They call it the Wire, and it operates through a network of visitors, mail, phone calls, and transfers that would make the internet jealous. Let me paint you a picture of how this actually works. When John, let's call him that, gets arrested for drug dealing and decides to cooperate with police, that information doesn't stay in the courtroom. His co-defendant's girlfriend visits her boyfriend in County Jail A. She mentions John's cooperation. That inmate has a cellmate who's being transferred to State Prison B next week. Before he leaves, he passes the information along. Meanwhile, John's own family members are visiting him, and other inmates are listening. Prison visiting rooms are like information exchanges. Every conversation is potential intelligence. Inmates have developed an incredible ability to read body language, pick up on conversations, and piece together stories from fragments of information. But here's what's truly remarkable. They've created a verification system. Information doesn't just spread, it gets confirmed through multiple sources. Court documents get smuggled in, legal papers are shared, and inmates with access to law libraries become information brokers. They've essentially created their own fact-checking network. The speed of this communication is remarkable too. Information can travel from one end of a facility to another in minutes, and between facilities in days. When someone new arrives, the relevant information about their background is often waiting for them before they even get to their housing unit. I'll admit, when I first learned about this system, I thought it was just prison gossip. But the accuracy is incredible. Inmates will know details about cooperation agreements that weren't even discussed in open court. They'll have information about sealed documents, private meetings with prosecutors, and even conversations that happened in attorney-client meetings. The network operates through what they call runners, inmates who specialize in gathering and distributing information. These people have developed incredible memories, able to retain complex details about dozens of cases simultaneously. They become walking databases of who cooperated with whom, when, and under what circumstances. You might think that's impossible, but actually, prisons have developed a classification system more detailed than anything you'd find in corporate America. Every inmate gets categorized not just by their crime, but by their behavior, their associations, and most importantly, their cooperation with authorities. When someone arrives at a new facility, they don't just get a cell assignment. They get evaluated by a network of inmates who've been perfecting this process for decades. It's like a background check, but conducted entirely through underground channels. Here's how incredibly thorough this system is. Inmates will know not just what you did, but who you testified against. what you said in court, whether you wore a wire, and even details about your cooperation agreement that weren't made public. They've created a database that exists entirely in human memory and informal networks. The classification isn't just snitch or not snitch. There are levels. Someone who cooperated to reduce their own sentence gets treated differently than someone who initiated contact with police. Someone who testified against a stranger gets different treatment than someone who betrayed a friend or family member. And here's what's truly ingenious. They've developed a rehabilitation system within their classification. Some people can work their way back into good standing through specific actions, community service within the prison, or by providing valuable information or services to other inmates. It's like a credit repair system, but for prison social standing. The information networks don't just identify snitches, they create detailed profiles. Inmates know the difference between someone who cooperated under pressure versus someone who volunteered information. They understand the distinction between testifying to save your own life versus testifying for money or reduced sentences. This classification system operates with remarkable consistency across different facilities. An inmate transferred from California to Texas will find that his reputation has preceded him. The network maintains institutional memory that spans decades, with older inmates passing down information about cases from the 1980s and 1990s. The classification process involves multiple stages of verification. When someone new arrives, their story gets checked against known facts, cross-referenced with other inmates' knowledge, and verified through outside sources. It's like a security clearance investigation, but conducted entirely by prisoners. There are different categories within the snitch classification. Paper snitches are people whose cooperation is documented in court records. Street snitches are those who provided information to police but never testified. Wire snitches are people who wore recording devices. Each category carries different social consequences and different paths to potential redemption. Now, here's where human ingenuity really shines. When someone is labeled a snitch, they don't just get abandoned. An entire protection economy springs into action. And the creativity behind how this works is absolutely fascinating. First, there's geographical protection. Inmates have mapped out every facility in the system. They know which prisons are safer for certain types of inmates, which guards are more protective, which housing units provide better security. When someone needs protection, this information network activates to help them navigate to safer locations, but it goes deeper than that. Inmates have created their own witness protection program. They'll help someone change their appearance, develop new mannerisms, even create entirely new backstories. I've seen cases where inmates taught someone to speak with a different accent, helped them learn about a completely different crime they could claim to be in for, and coached them on how to answer questions about their past. The economic aspect is incredible too. Snitches often lose access to the regular prison economy. They can't participate in gambling, trading, or most informal businesses. So, other inmates have created alternative economic systems specifically for people who need protection. It's like a parallel economy with its own rules and currency. Here's what really blew my mind. They've developed a communication system for people in protective custody. These inmates are often isolated from the general population, but other inmates have figured out ways to maintain contact through everything from coded messages in library books to elaborate systems involving maintenance workers and food service staff. The protection economy operates on different principles than the general prison economy. Instead of being based on strength or criminal reputation, it's based on usefulness and potential for redemption. A snitch who can teach literacy classes, provide legal advice, or offer other valuable services can earn protected status within certain groups. Some facilities have developed mentorship programs where older, respected inmates work with people who've made mistakes. These aren't official programs. They're entirely inmate-run initiatives designed to help someone understand prison culture and find their place in the community. The protection systems are incredibly sophisticated. There are safe houses within prisons, specific cells, or housing units where people under threat can find sanctuary. These areas are protected by informal agreements between different inmate groups, creating neutral zones where conflicts are suspended. Inmates have developed early warning systems that alert protected individuals to potential threats. These networks can identify when someone is planning retaliation and provide advance notice, allowing the target to take protective measures or request official intervention. The creativity extends to creating new identities within the prison system. Inmates will help someone develop a completely different persona, teaching them about crimes they didn't commit, coaching them on regional dialects, and even helping them learn about different cultural backgrounds to support their new identity. I'll admit, when I first learned about prison justice systems, I expected it to be all about violence. But the reality is far more sophisticated and, honestly, more creative than anything I could have imagined. Violence is actually the least common response to snitching. Why? Because it's inefficient and brings unwanted attention from authorities. Instead, inmates have developed a range of consequences that are much more effective at maintaining order. Social isolation is the most common punishment, but it's not just ignoring someone. It's a complete systematic exclusion that's incredibly well organized. The person loses access to information networks, protection systems, economic opportunities, and social support. They become invisible within the prison community. But here's where it gets really interesting. Inmates have created rehabilitation programs for snitches. These aren't official programs. They're entirely inmate-run initiatives designed to help someone understand why their actions were harmful and how they can make amends to the community. The justice mechanisms operate on principles of restorative, rather than purely punitive justice. The goal isn't just to punish someone for snitching, it's to help them understand how their actions affected the community and what they can do to rebuild trust. Sometimes, a snitch can make amends by providing services to the community, teaching classes, mediating disputes, or using their skills to help other inmates with legal issues or personal problems. The system recognizes that people make mistakes and provides pathways for redemption. There are informal tribunals where respected inmates hear cases and make decisions about appropriate responses to snitching. These proceedings follow established protocols, with opportunities for the accused to explain their actions and for community members to speak about the impact. The creativity extends to graduated responses. First-time cooperation might result in temporary social isolation and community service requirements. Repeated snitching or particularly harmful cooperation might result in permanent exclusion from certain activities or areas of the facility. The justice system includes appeals processes. If someone believes they've been wrongly accused or unfairly punished, there are mechanisms for challenging decisions. Respected inmates serve as advocates, investigators, and judges in these informal proceedings. There are also statute of limitations concepts. Someone who snitched decades ago might find that their past cooperation is no longer held against them, especially if they've demonstrated loyalty to the prison community over many years. The system recognizes different motivations for cooperation. Someone who snitched to protect their family receives different treatment than someone who cooperated for money or personal gain. The community understands that people face impossible choices and judges accordingly. You might think communication would be impossible in such a controlled environment, but actually, inmates have developed communication systems that would make tech companies envious. And when it comes to managing information about snitches, these networks become absolutely crucial. The basic system works through what they call kites, written messages passed between inmates. But the sophistication goes far beyond simple note passing. They've developed coding systems, dead drops, and relay networks that can move information across entire facilities without detection. Here's how incredible this gets. Inmates have created their own postal system. Messages get routed through multiple people, with each person only knowing the next link in the chain. If one person gets caught, the entire network doesn't collapse. It's like the internet, information finds alternative routes automatically. But the real genius is in the verification systems. Important information about snitches doesn't just get passed along. It gets confirmed through multiple independent sources. They've essentially created their own fact-checking network that operates entirely through human intelligence. The communication networks use multiple channels simultaneously. Information might travel through written messages, verbal communication during meals, coded conversations during phone calls, and even through family members on the outside who pass messages between different facilities. Inmates have developed sophisticated coding systems that allow them to discuss sensitive topics without detection. These codes evolve constantly, with new terminology and methods being developed to stay ahead of institutional monitoring efforts. The networks maintain detailed records of who can be trusted with different types of information. Some inmates specialize in gathering intelligence, others in verification, and still others in distribution. It's a complete information ecosystem with specialized roles and responsibilities. The communication systems include backup methods for when primary channels are compromised. If written messages are being intercepted, the network switches to verbal codes. If phone calls are being monitored too closely, information flows through visitor communications. Inmates have created their own encryption methods, using everything from book codes to mathematical sequences to protect sensitive information. These systems are constantly evolving, with new methods being developed and tested regularly. The networks maintain communication logs, informal records of what information has been passed, when, and through which channels. This helps prevent duplication and ensures that important updates reach all relevant parties. There are quality control mechanisms built into the communication systems. Information that proves to be false gets traced back to its source, and unreliable informants lose their credibility within the network. Here's how all these pieces come together into something truly remarkable. Inmates have created a complete alternative society with its own government, economy, justice system, and social services. And it all operates through pure human ingenuity and cooperation. When someone snitches, they're not just violating a rule, they're threatening the stability of this entire system. The response isn't random or emotional, it's systematic and designed to maintain order while providing opportunities for redemption. The classification system identifies the threat level. The information networks verify the facts and spread awareness. The protection economy provides alternatives for people who need safety. The justice mechanisms determine appropriate consequences, and the communication systems coordinate all of these responses. What's truly incredible is how this system adapts and evolves. When authorities change prison policies or introduce new security measures, the inmate networks adjust their methods. When new types of crimes or cooperation agreements emerge, they develop new classification categories and response protocols. The system even has quality control mechanisms. If someone is wrongly accused of snitching, there are processes for investigating and correcting the mistake. If someone in authority within the inmate hierarchy abuses their power, there are ways to challenge and replace them. This alternative society operates with remarkable consistency across different facilities and security levels. The basic principles remain the same whether you're in a minimum security facility or a maximum security penitentiary, though the specific methods and consequences may vary. The system demonstrates incredible organizational sophistication. There are informal leadership structures, dispute resolution mechanisms, resource allocation systems, and even educational programs, all created and maintained by people who are supposed to be powerless within the official prison structure. The alternative society includes its own cultural institutions. There are storytelling traditions that preserve the history of the community, artistic expressions that reflect shared values, and rituals that mark important transitions in prison life. The system has developed its own forms of currency and trade. Services, information, protection, and goods all have established exchange rates within the prison economy. These economic relationships create stability and predictability in an otherwise chaotic environment. There are informal educational systems where experienced inmates teach newcomers about prison culture, survival strategies, and the unwritten rules that govern daily life. These mentorship relationships help maintain continuity and ensure that community standards are passed down to new generations of inmates. Behind all of this incredible organization are human stories that demonstrate the most remarkable aspects of survival and adaptation. Let me share some examples that really illustrate what we're talking about. There's Marcus, who came into the system labeled as a snitch, but spent 5 years proving his loyalty to the community through his actions. He became a mediator for disputes, taught literacy classes, and eventually earned enough respect to become a leader in his housing unit. His story shows how the system allows for redemption and growth. Then there's David, who was wrongly labeled as a snitch due to misinformation. The inmate network investigated his case, discovered the error, and not only cleared his name but helped him pursue legal action against the people who had spread false information about him. And there's Robert, who actually was a cooperating witness but found ways to contribute to the prison community that earned him a form of protected status. He used his legal knowledge to help other inmates with their cases, always being careful not to encourage cooperation with authorities, but helping them understand their rights and options. These stories show that the system isn't just about punishment, it's about maintaining community standards while providing pathways for people to prove their worth and earn their place in the social structure. The resilience and creativity that emerges from these situations is truly inspiring. People find ways to maintain their dignity, build meaningful relationships, and contribute to their community even in the most challenging circumstances. There are countless examples of inmates who've overcome the stigma of snitching through years of consistent behavior that demonstrates their commitment to the community. Some become teachers, others become counselors, and some become leaders who help maintain order and resolve conflicts. The human stories also include examples of inmates who've used their experiences with the consequences of snitching to become advocates for criminal justice reform on the outside. They understand both sides of the equation, the harm that cooperation can cause to communities and the importance of accountability for criminal behavior. There's the story of James, who snitched on his brother to avoid a life sentence, then spent 15 years in prison learning to live with that decision. He eventually became a substance abuse counselor within the prison, helping other inmates deal with addiction issues while slowly rebuilding relationships with family members who had been affected by his cooperation. Another remarkable story involves Maria, whose husband cooperated with authorities in a major drug case. She found herself ostracized by her community on the outside, but when she was later incarcerated on unrelated charges, she discovered that the prison community was more forgiving than the streets. She was able to rebuild her life and relationships within the prison system in ways that hadn't been possible in her neighborhood. Then there's the case of Tony, who was falsely accused of being a snitch by someone trying to deflect attention from their own cooperation. The prison community's investigation not only cleared Tony, but exposed the real informant, demonstrating the system's commitment to truth and justice even when it's inconvenient. What we see in prison responses to snitching reveals something profound about human nature and our capacity for creating order from chaos. When people are stripped of almost everything, freedom, privacy, material possessions, they don't just survive, they innovate. The systems we've explored today didn't emerge overnight. They're the result of decades of collective problem solving by thousands of people facing impossible circumstances. Every challenge presented by the prison environment has been met with creative solutions that demonstrate the incredible adaptability of human communities. The information networks show us how people can create sophisticated communication systems using nothing but human relationships and creativity. The classification systems demonstrate our natural tendency to organize and categorize in ways that promote group survival. The protection economies reveal how people will always find ways to care for vulnerable community members. Most importantly, the justice mechanisms show us that even in the most punitive environment imaginable, people still believe in redemption, rehabilitation, and second chances. The system isn't perfect, and it can be harsh, but it's also remarkably fair and focused on community preservation rather than individual revenge. This teaches us that human beings are fundamentally social creatures who will create order, meaning, and community under any circumstances. The ingenuity and resourcefulness we see in prison populations isn't unique to that environment. It's a demonstration of capabilities that exist in all of us when we're faced with extreme challenges. The next time you hear someone dismiss prisoners as just criminals, remember the incredible organizational skills, communication networks, and social systems they've created from nothing. These are the same human capabilities that built civilizations, created technologies, and solved the greatest challenges in human history. What happens when you snitch in prison isn't just about breaking a code. It's about how human communities respond to threats while maintaining their capacity for justice, mercy, and redemption. And that's a lesson we can all learn from, regardless of where we find ourselves in life. The ingenuity, resourcefulness, and fundamental humanity we see in these prison communities reminds us that even in the darkest circumstances, people find ways to create light, build connections, and maintain hope for a better future. The systems they've created demonstrate that human creativity and cooperation can flourish even in the most restrictive environments, producing solutions that are both sophisticated and deeply humane. These communities have developed ways to balance accountability with compassion, justice with mercy, and order with individual dignity. They've created mechanisms for both punishment and redemption, showing that even in prison, people believe in the possibility of change and growth. The response to snitching in prison ultimately reflects our deepest human values: the importance of loyalty, the power of community, the possibility of redemption, and the incredible creativity that emerges when people work together to solve complex problems. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and our capacity to create meaning and purpose even in the most challenging circumstances. The prison community's approach to dealing with snitches demonstrates that justice doesn't always come from official institutions. Sometimes it emerges from the collective wisdom of people who understand the complexities of survival, loyalty, and redemption in ways that formal systems cannot. These informal justice systems remind us that human communities will always find ways to maintain order, protect the vulnerable, and provide opportunities for redemption, even when stripped of traditional power structures and resources. The creativity and compassion that emerges from these circumstances offers hope for what human beings can accomplish when they work together toward common goals.